Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Stefan Maeder, an archaeologist and independent researcher. So, hello, Stefan. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much for having me. Mhm.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you so much. And we're going to be talking about your recent work on the Crozier, the whale, and the Big Dipper. So, this is really exciting because you found some absolutely amazing things.
This started in the meantime 9 years ago when I was working in Yorkshire, in Leeds actually, and
Yeah.
I spent quite a bit of time exploring the Yorkshire moors where there are lots of boulders and sites with cup marks.
Mm.
And well, while finding several representations of the Big Dipper again, which is not very surprising as it's the most obvious asterism in the northern sky. I thought, well, if you want to memorize asterisms, well, the most reasonable thing is to link them up to something that helps you remember and something, of course, that is important in your culture. This
Mm.
is what the Babylonians did, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans.
Yeah.
And definitely they did it also and already in the Neolithic in our cultural sphere. This is really a very lucky coincidence. It's like a full score in a lottery because, say, uh, most of the constellations I could confirm in the meantime, and I started out with the proper amount of skepticism
Mm.
because, say, for more than 150 years, the observations of mainly these were priests, teachers, um, people doing land measuring and forestry workers, and often even marine captains who were used to navigate by the stars
Yeah.
and well already still the generation of our grandparents they knew
Mm.
how to tell the hour of the night by the position of the Big Dipper, etc. And
Yeah.
these people for more than 150 years in the meantime, they observed that in several instances, or in quite a few instances, there are constellations represented on many of these cup-marked stones. And of
Okay.
these cup-marked stones, many again are incorporated in megalithic tombs. So they are probably not just there for fun, but they have a meaning. But all these findings were dismissed by archaeology, mainly because they were only looking at one instance. So it's easy
Mm.
to dismiss this as a coincidence or as wishful thinking of the finder. And the first step I actually did was to check some of the rejected examples, and
Yeah.
already this gave quite a significant number. And so that I could state, well, this is most probably neither coincidence nor wishful thinking. And since this realization, in the meantime, I think I have about 100 constellations or more represented by cup marks in the Northern Hemisphere. Most of them are in Brittany. And as I can do this research, independent research, only in my spare or free time,
Mm.
one can be quite certain that this is just the tip of an iceberg.
Yeah. That's so amazing. So there's so much more to discover. So when you say the cup marks on the stones, so what are we talking about? Are these stones that are standing stones on their own, or are they associated with larger monuments?
In the Alps, often they are erratic boulders, and there's something quite fascinating about erratic boulders because we know nowadays that these are leftovers from glaciers. So, but for the people, say 6,000 years ago, they they would have noticed that this is
Yeah.
not the local bedrock.
Yeah.
Oftentimes,
Yeah.
these were transported for hundreds of kilometers by glaciers. But when you don't have this knowledge, I think if I try to think of a pre-scientific logic, it is not too far-fetched to think that they even fell from the sky. And
That's
actually,
right.
there
Yeah.
are even studies that well, meteorites falling were observed throughout history all over the planet. And so this is not a crazy thought, and this
Mm.
might have been one reason why I just think of one example near Solothurn in Switzerland, where you have a very nice and to scale correct representation of the swan, including Vega, and there are not many cupules around. It's just these cupules, and they form this yeah, constellation. And when it comes to Brittany, I was thinking, say, well, when you look at Greek and Roman constellations, they don't look like what they are supposed to mean at all. I think I'll switch on
The
the
screen share.
presentation
Oh, yeah.
just
Great. Yeah.
just to show what I mean. For example, oops, if we see this here, then we see that the bear, if you look at the stars forming the big bear, they don't
Yeah.
look like a bear at all.
Hmm.
If you look at the links, you have something that looks rather like a snake because there are no stars representing legs. This is just, or the giraffe, even something that is at least, well, a constellation that was added in medieval times doesn't look
Yeah.
like it. And actually, the uh, Arcturus looks more like a fish if one is honest. And
Yeah.
so I chose this slide as an introduction. We will start, and or we I can start, and I can also end with this, because what they did in Brittany was something that was really probably far more intelligent than what was done in the Middle East and by the Greeks and Romans. They took the brightest stars
Hmm.
around the then northern celestial pole. And of course, they did not see a dragon or this dragon or a little bear or a big bear or something that is present now because they were 3,000 years earlier. But they they to get these to memorize these asterisms, the simplest method is to just think of a line drawn around them. And then if you do this for a time span around 4,600 to around 4,000 BC,
Yeah.
you get three outlines that correspond to a kind of walking stick or crook. And if you use this one and these two within the
Hmm.
Big Dipper, you get the outline that corresponds nearly exactly to the outline of these so-called Karnak axis.
Yeah.
And if you draw a line around the Big Dipper, you get this outline here, and this, as we'll see later, this corresponds to the engravings found in central places in Morbihan, in the well-known graves, on the most famous and most gigantic monuments and menhirs.
Wow. So there's so much going on here. You've got, first of all, looking at the sky the way it would have looked slightly differently in 4 to 5,000 BC.
Mhm.
And you've got different ways of connecting the dots, if you like, the different important points in the sky near the North Celestial Pole. And so you're not looking for a dragon or a bear or a frying pan or whatever we're
Yeah.
looking for. It's actually quite different. So how on earth do you piece it all together?
Well, this is by comparison with other cultures, which is not very popular anymore in present day archaeology, because say if you install the freeware program Stellarium,
Mm.
you have the different star cultures. For different cultures,
Yeah.
you have the different images linked to certain asterisms.
Yeah.
And there's an Austrian author, Raoul Schrott. He published an atlas of Atlas der Sternkulturen, an atlas
Okay.
of astronomical cultures. And this book is about this size, this thick, and quite obvious that this is something that is not just fun.
Yeah.
These are hypotheses and working systems that just function. And you can see on this slide also in Stellarium, I'll just point it out here. You see this is the precession circle. And this is something, when I speak to colleagues about precession, I was even reproached once, you are writing the word precision wrongly because they've never heard of precession.
Yeah.
Actually, about 20 years ago, I've also never heard about precession. So I was singing along in the choir of big skeptics, very self-confident skeptics, but I had to review this view, and this is just a simple fact. You can see that the our present pole star, we are lucky to have one, is here around
Mm.
the year 2000, and you can see here at about 800, there's a very slight one which was used by the Vikings, which was a perfect means to travel to America or Greenland, because this
Yeah.
allowed navigation at night to more correctly than a magnetic compass.
Yeah.
And we see that there was nothing at all about, where is the thing, about the birth of Christ. And the last time there was a proper pole star was 2800 BC around, when you see this star here in the dragon, Tuban, which is the one that was um, aimed at also by the big pyramid in Giza. And if you go farther, at around 5000 here, there was a very weak star also in the middle. And so you can easily recognize already that the Big Dipper nowadays is far more distant from the actual pole than it was, say, between 2000 and 6000 BC. And this
Mm.
is what allows to date, because most of the constellation groups I find are circumpolar constellations. And I am not an astronomer, so for about 15 or 16 years, I tried to find astronomers interested in the history of constellations.
Mm.
But this is about as futile up to now as finding archaeologists interested in the history of astronomy. So this is basically what I do. Unfortunately, is a one-man show as yet, as much as I would like to be a team player. But
Yeah.
at one point, I think even institutional colleagues will realize that this is not just made up esoteric fancies, because, well, you have the cultural significance of the northern celestial pole in loads of different cultures in the northern hemisphere. So this is nothing far-fetched, actually.
Hmm. Yeah, so the North Pole is so symbolic, so strong, going back continuously in history and into prehistory. But then also this precession phenomenon is really important. So this idea that the center of the stars
Is
is
shifting.
not corresponding to always the same star. Like
Yeah,
it's not always the same point that we as
yeah.
we see it. Yeah, that's so important. So it makes sense to think about it in those terms and to wonder what the sky looked like when these stones were being erected and when the monuments were being built.
And actually, I'm far from being the first one to do this, but the precursors, say the people on whose work I also build, these were people like the medicine physician, Dr. Marcel Baudouin in France,
Hmm.
and He had some strange ideas also, I must admit, but he was fully aware of the significance of precession and of the significance of the circumpolar constellations.
Yeah.
But as at his time, there was no carbon 14 yet. This was about 50, 60 years before carbon
Hmm.
14. And so it is easy to mock him nowadays because he was betting on the completely wrong horse when it came to absolute chronology. He
Okay.
was not the only one, certainly, but this is
Yeah.
now a very popular argument to regard him as kind of, I think it was Jacques Briard who said, nowadays we can only smile at people like Marcel Baudouin with their strange ideas. But actually his idea on the significance of precession
Mm.
for dating were absolutely spot on.
Mm.
And there's another thing I wonder at the moment because about 3 years ago, there was a team from the French CNRS, the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique, working in Saudi Arabia, where
Hmm.
they documented so-called desert kites. Desert kites are
Okay. Yeah.
large deer traps, sometimes several hundred meters long, up to more than a kilometer actually, and they look like a child, or well, like the Star of Bethlehem is represented in many churches. You have a long tail like a comet, and it's like this shape. It gets
Yeah.
smaller, and then at the top you have something like a star with points. And in each of these points, it was laid out on the ground by a kind of wall, probably also with wattle work. So the deer was chased inside this long feature, converging feature. Then they went into the star. The door was closed behind them, and in each point of the star, there was a how do you say a hole about
Yeah.
3, 4 meters deep, where they fell in, where they could easily be harvested. And the good thing about or the important thing about this research is that the team found out that the layout for these traps was actually drawn probably before or even after they were built to scale. And there is an article on Academia, the first man-made megastructures, the first human-made, the earliest human-made megastructures, and they date to 6000 BC. And
Right.
they are made to scale on rock. Say the drawing on rock is about 3 meters. The
Mm.
original is several hundred meters. So it is obvious that they could map. And there is no reason the people in Brittany, in England, in Scandinavia, on the continent, they were not any more stupid than people were in Saudi Arabia at the time. And in the last few years, there was actually a similar trap discovered on the ground of the Baltic Sea,
Okay.
which was above ground in Mesolithic times still.
Yeah.
And they also found a stone wall about 1 kilometer long, which is interpreted now as a feature to trap deer.
It's pretty ingenious as a hunting system.
Yes.
But it's interesting that it's also a map. By
Yeah.
coincidence, I actually watched something about these desert kites this morning, and they're actually fascinating.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
think they were first discovered about 100 years ago by a British military pilot who wondered, What's this? Like a star, but only visible from the sky." But
Mm.
this is another phenomenon on which we can talk about perhaps a little later, that outlines of symbolic uh, objects
Mm.
were created on the ground in large scale, um, so to say, which would not be visible from the ground, but they were built probably to be seen from above. And at that
Yeah.
time, say there are colleagues like Pierre Petrika who located the origin of the Alpine Jade, the quarries for these extremely like fallen out of time jadeite axes,
Hmm.
and he is ready to consider um, well to consider even that the sky at that time already was populated by deities.
Okay.
So there is no need at all for extraterrestrials or having alignments interpreted as landing markings for
The
extraterrestrials.
spaceships. Yeah.
These things were just made to be seen from above because there's hardly any culture where you don't have the principle well, as above, so below,
Hmm.
or where
Yeah,
people
that's
did
right.
not project their world
Yeah.
onto the sky, actually.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you could fly, maybe in an
No,
astral
not
plane in your mind
necessarily.
or something,
Yeah.
but not necessarily actual flight. And
Mm.
always like to think about the Nazca lines and the animals, but also all the beautiful sculptures that you get on the tops of cathedrals that you just can't see from the ground.
Yes,
And you
yeah,
kind of think, well, they must be just made for some sort of divine eye up above or
yeah,
something.
certainly. And they are much closer to heaven, so to say. And this is
Yeah.
something also I'm glad that I may cite a serious colleague, which is Monsieur Petrika, encore une fois, again. He said that these quarries for the jadeite stone, of course, they were very close to the sky at Mount Viso, and he even mused to regard them as kind of a present from the gods. So
Okay. Yeah.
indirectly, he appears to even dare think that there were gods up above there already 6, 7,000 years ago. Incredible.
So, so we're looking at something that's about astronomy for navigation, as you mentioned, but it's also something else.
Yeah,
There's also a belief system potentially.
I would say that the very practical, or what we would nowadays call profane sense, is that a systematic observation of the northern celestial pole, also its shift,
Mm.
just makes perfect sense not to get lost,
Yeah,
neither while crossing a desert or while navigating the sea, or even, say, when traveling forests and from now and then, well, crawling up and climbing up and looking where you are if you have a
yeah,
clear night.
yeah,
So you can correct your course again because, well, most of the time there were clouds by then, certainly also. So you had to check and recheck from time to time, just as you
mm,
did on any ship before modern navigation
yeah,
methods.
yeah, yeah. And they would have used the stars and star charts,
Exactly.
and
And this is
also very important. They would have used timing, different ways.
definitely,
Yeah,
definitely. So this is the purely practical and perhaps from an archaeological point of view, the most acceptable um, reason for the necessity of the pole, but what I think is even, well, perhaps just as fascinating is that this area around the pole was not just necessary for terrestrial orientation, navigation, but
mm,
to all to all archaeological evidence also necessary for excuse my using the term spiritual orientation. This is
yeah,
something that is terrible to mention, but obviously this was important because also from many different cultures there were several large volumes written on this about this already by John O'Neill, who was not an academic, but who who studied several languages,
mm,
including the Egyptian hieroglyphs up to
yeah,
Japanese and Chinese, just to check his hypothesis on the importance of the celestial pole. And for example, in China, it's obvious that the nobility was sent to the at least to the circumpolar area. This was the case also in Japanese and Korean tombs of the first centuries AD, where you have star charts written on the ceiling, which
Mhm.
nobody would dare to question. But at the same time, it seems to be laughable or ridiculous or some kind of heresy to suppose that there were similar thoughts existing already at around 5,000, 4,500 BC in Brittany, in Spain, in the Mediterranean, in England, in Ireland.
Mm. It's an interesting sense of almost what's allowed and what's not allowed. Why would this not be something that's acceptable? I suppose, is it maybe just the way we regard our ancestors of this era that we maybe look down on them a little bit? Or
I,
is it just that
yeah.
science doesn't allow us to think in terms of anything that's not found in the ground? Is it just
Mm,
about method, maybe?
mm. I think one of the reasons is that even modern science is when it comes to safeguarding orthodoxies
Mm,
is not too far away from what the Catholic Church practiced over about 1,500 years,
hmm.
if one is honest with oneself. At the same time, I think it's also due to well, Darwinism, so that everything,
Yeah.
also the intellectual capacities, even which is completely disproved, but even intellectual capacities should properly um, develop in a linear way.
Yes. Yeah.
But when it comes to survival under say Neolithic conditions, we would probably die within a week, or at least
Yes. Well, I would.
at
No
within a
supermarkets.
month at the longest. And they, without metal, without smartphones and everything, they
Yeah.
even had the time to calculate, to construct, to plan, and to build megalithic structures.
Yeah.
Well, we can start earlier. These are two pictures from two very nice videos on YouTube,
Yes. I listened
where
to them. They're really interesting.
which were really nicely done and
Mm.
describing the discovery, so to say, of one of these engravings as probably being a kind of whale.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I am completely happy with. But for me, these are just auxiliary terms. This is not necessarily a real whale because
Okay.
the way it is represented in the graves and on the big stela, this is not very, how do you say, anatomically correct. Hmm.
Hmm.
So we already spoke about precession. This is just to yeah, to demonstrate this circle. This circle here takes about nearly 26,000 years.
Hmm.
But of course, each once a day, the Earth turns around its own axis, which is the reason for day and night. And here you can see another version of the precession circle. We see our actual pole star. We see nicely the one at 2,800 BC, and the one at 5,000 is not shown here.
Hmm.
But say before we go to the whale, there was another method of locating the pole exactly at around 5,000 BC. And the first example I'd like to show is the Tumulus Saint-Michel in Carnac in Brittany, which is usually dated around 4,500, 4,700, could be 4,800 even. But the fascinating thing is that in the central chamber, this area here is enlarged a bit, and the capstone of the central chamber bears several cup marks, very distinct ones, but these
Hmm.
are hardly ever mentioned in any
Okay.
documentary on this huge tumulus.
Mm.
But
It is huge.
to have cup marks in the most extraordinary chamber with the most extraordinary grave finds in, well, one of three or four tombs with such grave goods is nothing that should be easily dismissed. And they are probably, well, many colleagues say, they could be even medieval, they could be modern, but these were definitely there already when the slab was put in place, because actually I was under these cupules, and it would be extremely uncomfortable to well, create these lying on your back. And this was done before
Before.
the
Oh,
slab
so
was put
these are
in.
above then. They're on the ceiling.
Yes, they're on the ceiling,
Okay.
and the ceiling is about, I guess, about 1 meter something. And
Right.
here you can see these, um, yeah,
Mm.
the cup marks, and you can see four very deep and nice and round ones, and you can see two that were eventually just started or never finished, but they are in a place that corresponds perfectly with this here. And of course, probably some modern astronomers might say, well, this here is too close. In reality, it's a little bit farther away.
Yeah.
Well, this is a fact, but this structure, this arrangement in itself is already much more exact than any um, representation of an asterism between late antiquity and the 16th century. Because
Okay.
in medieval times, you just represented the figure and you put some points on there, but never
Yes.
in the right place, so that
Yes.
only that people who received the teaching, the education in a medieval abbey in proper astronomy, they could use these books. But if you were not instructed beforehand,
Yeah.
you could not make anything out of the star charts in medieval manuscripts.
Yeah,
And
I've often
same.
wondered about that. It's true. You see like a woman or a man or
Yes.
some kind of character or an
Mhm.
animal, and yeah, you just have very stylized couple of stars, but they don't seem to make any sense.
No, they don't. And it's very intentional that they don't make sense, because
Ah,
this was something in the true sense esoteric, just like
okay.
meant for a chosen few.
Okay.
And perhaps even the things I found out here, perhaps 90, 95, 96, 97% of the Neolithic population were just as um, disinterested in cosmological theory as people are nowadays, while being distracted using their smartphones and shopping
Yeah.
from anywhere.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would be happy to accept that even these cup marks, well, one could say this is just a coincidence. They were
Mm,
just put there in the most important central chamber in all of the area by coincidence. Well, but I don't
mhm.
believe in coincidence. And if this were a singular example, I could live with it, but it's definitely not,
Yeah.
because you have a few, about 20 kilometers farther on the Ile de Croix, you have a destroyed tumulus
Mhm.
where our German Wehrmacht again put a bunker inside an existing tumulus on top of a hill, which was certainly nicely sited from a strategic point of view. But certainly they destroyed the nice grave, or the number of corridor graves excavated by Louis Le Pontois in 1928 or before. And you can see here again, the upper half of this slab gives a perfect rendering of the brightest stars.
Okay.
close to the pole in 5000 BC, and they just left out the weakest stars in the weakest one in the Big Dipper, because this line you see here, if you prolong this, you could easily find this very weak pole star, but
Mm.
which was much more exact than any magnetic compass. This is the second example.
S-
Then we move on. The third example is preserved now in the Musée de la Préhistoire in Karnak, and it was found in the filling around the Dolmen de Liso, which means that it was put there secondary, that it was already extant when this dolmen was built. And
mm.
again, the arrangement of the cupules was looks like this, and this again is far more accurate than any late antique or medieval star chart. And here again, on the left side, you see a nice crozier,
Yeah.
which is perhaps already implying that it should not be regarded right from the beginning as completely impossible to have a crozier in the sky also, if you have a star map
Hmm.
here beside.
And Stefan, can I just ask the last three pictures, so this one and the last two actually,
Mhm.
do they all show the same part of the sky?
Yes, yep. These are all circumpolar charts. And if you look here, you can see that in this circle there was a hemispherical dome
Mm.
above this area with
Yeah.
these central, and you can see the central chamber could hardly be more central, so that this symbolism of the center, which also John
Yeah.
Mitchell wrote about extensively and not
Yeah.
badly, um, this is just a very simple fact. And again, in the center of the covering slab of the central chamber, in a round hemispherical dome, which is basically nothing else than a cupule negative. Um, this just it makes sense, or if it doesn't make sense, I would like to have a sensible explanation
Hmm.
why it doesn't make sense. Because we very casually speak of central chambers, of central burials, and we find these things always there. This was also in the middle of a big tertre, a cairn. The next example here also
Yeah.
incorporated in one, but we wouldn't know where it was sited before, whether it was just a single little standing stone or whether it was already part of a construction.
Hmm.
Then we have the fourth. This is a stone removed from a dolmen, which forms now the Pont Gaulois in Kervon, Finistère. And there were some hints that there were some cupules, so I went there to check. And this is by now, this is not the level of documentation that Serge Cassen can deliver, but obviously you can see that there are no other deep, big cupules, and there is no other shape on the whole stone like this. And if you
Yeah.
compare this again,
It's the same.
it's the same again. And it's for the very simple reason that wherever you are in our latitudes, the most conspicuous asterism, the easiest way to locate the apparent fixed point in the sky is the
Mm.
Big Dipper. And again, and even the cross makes sense, even if it's not to scale. But it includes, for example, it includes Tuban here, which was
Yeah.
the pole star in 2800. This would be the end of the crook if we move around here,
Okay.
the end of the crook. And here, this is the top star in Arcturus. And even the angles to each other, they are correct. And the stars are represented to scale. And there can be no questioning like, you just choose the cupules that fit your strange theories.
They are
There
the
are
only
no
ones there.
other. There are no others.
Yeah.
on that stone.
So everything, so everything in the rest of the decoding starts from this particular asterism or
Yes,
constellation.
yeah, yeah. And actually, this is the far set goal of mine to write um, like a cultural history of the northern celestial pole for the northern hemisphere.
Oh,
But I
great.
will start with Brittany because this there you have
Yeah.
the most examples are from Brittany. And this is now it's already example number 6. And this is in southern France, in
Hmm.
the near Die en Diois. And you can see this men here, and there are you can see these cupules here,
Okay.
and there is the Spanish version of the sperm whale here. And if you look at this here, l'arrangement des cupules, you can see again the same the same system as in the Tumulus Saint-Michel, as in Liso, as in the Bouton RH on Ile-de-Groix, as on the Pont Gaulois.
Yeah.
This is not coincidence. And these are only the ones that I found myself. And imagine if there were some astronomers still interested in constellations, but
Yeah.
each and everyone seems to have his favorite star or nebula in the sky, so they are completely taken with that, just as most archaeologists are so, well, of course, I am too, preoccupied with their own questions that there is no time to even look at other work.
Yeah, sure. So one set of eyes is set on deep space and the
Yeah,
other on underground.
yeah, yes. So I'm,
So if you can try and combine
yeah, how do you call this?
myopia,
Yeah,
short-sighted, yeah,
I will become myopic,
or
definitely
long-sighted,
sooner or
exactly.
later.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the last example, and then there is another fact linking the axe blade to north. Say this is the earliest plan of the central chamber again in
Mhm.
Manet-Erchreuc in Locmaria-Caire, and these 1, 2, 3, 4 axes are aligned with a deviation of only 3 to 4 degrees east on the local meridian, and which is
Okay.
this line here indicated here. And in the report, it is mentioned that this is not magnetic north, but geographical north, so to
Hmm.
say true north. And this line created here by these axes has only 3 degrees deviation, which is yeah uh, well, not much even for a magnetic compass. And another point is this axe here, which was put with the point in this round ring of jadeite here. Um, this is the biggest jadeite axe known, with more than 46 centimeters. It even has a very crisp median ridge, and it points to the center of a circle. And you can imagine the archaeological interpretation is, well, because phalloi and vulvae are most popular still among archaeologists. So the explanation given now is today this is a kind of fertility system. You have something
Hmm.
more or less solid penetrating something more or less round, and I think this is the a bit childlike interpretation, because I think the fact that these are aligned perfectly north-south is something that should be taken into consideration also,
Hmm.
at least.
I mean, as you said, looking at the North Celestial Pole is not just a matter of science and navigation. There is significance that could be religious or mythical in some way. So
Mhm.
perhaps both explanations can work together as well. But yeah, as you say, the fact that the north-south line there is marked, then that's obviously significant.
And before I forget, because I often tend to forget the most important things, in the meantime, say, when speaking of Stonehenge, there is hardly any doubt anymore that the sunset during the winter solstice was very important, probably
Mm,
also to some degree the sunrise on the summer solstice, because it's much easier to party then than at the winter solstice. And but I would say that the motions of the sun are just important for a cosmology of daytime,
hmm
and life. And in my opinion, in the meantime, what I would call polar cosmology, and I'm not the first one to do this, polar cosmology I would link to the night and to death. And this is one reason why or in my opinion, one reason why we find it in funerary context or in ritual contexts. And
Okay.
then I think there is no point in trying to distinguish, oh, was it just an astronomical observatory? Was it also a grave? Was
Mm,
it for life? Was it for the living? Was it for the dead? I think
mm,
this is absolutely futile because if you think of any cathedral, you have all aspects of life
yeah.
included in the ceremonies uh, carried out in cathedrals. You have
Yeah.
baptism, you have marriage, you have first communion,
Mm,
etc. You have your funeral service in a
yeah.
church, and I
Yeah.
think
And everything in between.
it would be just reasonable to consider a wider meaning for these things and not just try to to fight about a single meaning of these things.
Mm. Yeah, it makes more sense to try and find common ground. And of
Yeah,
course you mentioned churches and they're also orientated towards a particular
certainly.
sunrise generally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And generally, they are oriented towards Jerusalem because Jerusalem was considered the center of the earth. And so
Mm.
Jerusalem lay opposite the northern celestial pole, just as the symbolism of the Kaaba in Mecca is it lies opposite the pole. But this may sound like a paradox, but well, wherever you are opposite the pole. Each
Yeah.
church, if you put yourself south of it, you have the pole star on top, so to say. You have the
Yeah.
firmament circling around your local, be it a menhir, be it a spire, church
Mm.
tower, anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, well, I mean the Earth is a sphere, so
Mhm.
makes sense.
And there is one further example here from Mane Erhök, which is a very strange star chart, but at the same time ingenious again,
Mm.
because you see here three different documentations. This is the earliest drawing of it. This is the two pictures rendered in the Corpus des Signes Gravés by Zachary Le Rouzic et Saint-Just Picard. And nowadays, I just watched a video of the la série pour l'introduction à l'UNESCO, quelque chose. This series which was published before the Morbihan region, the megaliths became classified UNESCO World Heritage. And
Yeah.
concerning this stone, it was again, oh, we will never know what this means. We will never know. And this
Uh-huh.
is a very strong dogma. So it has to be maintained. So
Mm.
what I show you now is dangerous again, but perhaps you can
Oh,
follow.
already something else.
And you can see here these combinations of croziers with axe blades, which make no sense at all from a practical viewpoint. Nobody
Hmm.
would put in such an axe blade into such a crook and use it. It would be destroyed at the first proper hit against something hard or bone or something. So this is
Mm.
just a combination of symbols. And you can see here, and here I rely again on the exemplary documentation work of Professor Kassen and his team. But if you put points um, in the joint areas of the axe blades and the crooks, which I did, the full-bodied points are for the crooks and axe blades. And for the croziers, I chose open little circles.
Okay.
And you arrive at this. You have here one, two, three, four, five strong dots, one weak one, here one filled one, unfilled, four full ones, and four within croziers. Now, why would I want to show this? Ah, yeah, just to show the northern celestial pole around
Okay.
5000 BC. Here, this very small little dot, but visible at the time, they had no light pollution,
Mm.
was the pole star in 5000 BC. And
Too
now
bad.
this is just to illustrate how we can locate the northern star today. This is this line. 2800 BC, you could easily use these three stars and you would arrive near exact at Tuban. 5000 years ago, you just took these two stars, and this one was completely unimportant to arrive at the pole star here within less than 1 degree accuracy. Another thing is here, you have this line between these two, and for the human eye, an angle of 90 degrees is very easy to
Mm.
memorize or to find out. And if you take 90 degrees from here and go upwards, you end up at the pole. And actually, you end up at the junction point of these two visual lines.
Visual, yeah. So that's interesting. So this would only have worked at that time, right?
At that time, exactly. And now
Yeah.
you can see for the first time also the axe in action, because
Aha.
the axe blade is actually the central motive. The crozier and the whale, they are just framing the pole. But the actual polar point for between, say, 3800 and 4750, the
Mm.
pole moves within this triangle.
Yeah.
And if you think of an elongated triangle, the only elongated triangular object they had at the time were stone axes. So it is not magic or rocket science to conclude that they used an instrument that was extremely important for their culture to
Hmm.
memorize this asterism. And
Yeah.
now there comes an explanation for some of these jadeite axes are perforated in exactly this spot here.
Ah.
And for me, you find perforated axes already in the earliest tumuli, like Tumulus Saint-Michel, like
Mm.
Manet-Erchreuc, like the Butte de César, Arzon, the big one. And for me, this is an indicator that already, say, at least since 5000 BC,
Yeah.
they knew that the pole was shifting. And actually, it was at this spot where we have the perforations, also on axes of the same form in Switzerland, in Italy, in Alsace, you find them. Um, this The pole was there actually about 4250 BC. It was exactly at the spot where there would be, or where there is, the perforation for the axis. And then there was this
Okay,
kind
that's
of
amazing.
desperate try to profanize this, to make it practical, and to have to regard this as a suspension hole.
Mm,
But imagine jadeite is extremely hard. The
mm,
axes are about this thick, and you have to drill a hole of a diameter of perhaps 3 millimeters through there,
yeah,
which is nearly incredible without steel drills. And they did it with quartz, with something, and
yeah.
sand. It is incredible. So this was not done for a practical necessity. This was done for symbolical reasons. And for me personally, the most sensible explanation is that they observed that the pole between 5,000, since 5,000 and even earlier, but I cannot show all examples,
Mm,
moved within this axe blade. And now we return to Mane Erchak, and you see these asterisms here marked in Stellarium. And now there comes the solution,
yeah, the finale.
the finale, and you have these things which, of course, I admit they have been squeezed onto the slab, but
Hmm.
within the things they are absolutely coherent. Or again, at least several times more coherent than any medieval star chart. And there's another thing that for me points to their knowledge of precession in Brittany, which is very good for a Breton nationalist movement because Brittany seems to have been far more advanced than the rest of France in around 5,000 to 4,000 BC. But you can see that this shape here, these four stars,
Yeah.
they include the one star 85, I think it is in Hercules here, which was the pole star around 7,800 BC. Just a coincidence? And
Okay.
then again, if you have these four corresponding to the head of the dragon and another star in Hercules, which is too squeezed here and too close here. But if you look here, there are no other bright stars. These are the brightest stars in this direction from this asterism. And if you use this as kind of a pointer,
Yeah.
this star would have been the closest bright one to the pole in around 10,300 BC. And this is just a
Wow.
fact. This is just a fact.
Yeah.
And everybody may criticize this, or they may say, well, this is not exact enough for me, but please give me a better explanation. Be constructive. It's not
Mm.
just destroying hypotheses, it's coming up with something better. This is my stupidly idealistic view of science.
I'm looking at the two dots in on the stone in the middle that seem to look like eyes, and the one on the
Mhm.
right corresponds then to the North Celestial Pole. Is that right?
That one here?
Yeah,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
in
And
5000
and
BC.
just aside of it, you would have this bright star here,
Yeah.
which again is the end star of the Crozier.
Okay.
And around 4600 BC, 400 years later, the pole has shifted there. And this is the reason for the importance of the Crozier and the sperm whale at that time, because
Yeah.
the pole is located exactly near exact in the middle between this star, which forms the upper part of the tail fin of the sperm whale, and this star here, which forms the end of the Crozier. And if you link these two up, you find the spot, the proper spot of the pole, even if there is no proper pole star, which helps
Mhm.
you navigate to Spain, to the Mediterranean, to Ireland, to Britain.
Yeah.
So, and as there is also this recognition by Bettina Schulz-Paulson that the oldest carbon-14 dates come from Brittany, and the hypothesis is that this megalithic phenomenon spread along the coasts or spread by
Mm.
maritime ways to Spain and the Mediterranean. I thought she would like, or she might even be joyous to hear that I can provide the basis for maritime diffusion, which is proper knowledge of exact systematic navigation.
Hmm. Hmm.
This would be at the base of a maritime diffusion. But what happens? No answer, as
Yeah.
usual.
But it does stand to reason that if you're going to navigate before the era of GPS, you're going to know about the stars, right? That
You
I
have
don't think
to.
there's any way around that.
Yeah, you have
Yeah,
to.
and unless you're really hugging the shore in a very timid way, but even
This
so, I think
isn't.
you need to know.
Mm,
Yeah, and you need to make some crossings. And if you're going to go, I mean, there's no real limit to where the megalithic culture spread. You know, it's very coastal on the Atlantic, but it's not just there. So there's no limit you can put to their capacity to navigate either, is there?
yeah, mm, definitely.
Ah, so here we have the central. I was going to ask,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
what's,
I
does this
just put it.
correspond to anything?
Sorry?
Does this yellow shape correspond to anything in
Yes,
the sky, I wonder?
this is something that Professor Kassen calls a phallus.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little bit skeptical because usually, if I may say, they are longer than wide. But yeah, for me, it's less sexual. This is far more like a Romanesque window or arch or porch with the quadrangular part representing the Earth, defined by the four cardinal directions, and the rounded part here representing the dome of the sky,
Hmm.
with the highest point, actually the pole, represented by a point,
Yeah. Yeah.
is my personal crazy interpretation. And
Very good.
so now we are finally, here's the first whale. Oh, what do you say concerning time?
Oh, time. Don't worry about time. We're fine.
Okay, you
Yeah.
can
There's
cut
no,
me short anytime.
no. There's
Okay,
absolutely not. Just let's carry on.
so here is the first obvious whale with its blow in
Yeah. To me, that looks like a whale for sure. Yeah. The head,
that
and then
looks
obviously the spout, and the yeah, it's very well like.
quite whalish. Yeah, or like Professor Whittle said, very like a whale. Mm.
I think I'd have to agree with that.
And this is a picture I could take a few years ago in Locmaria Care of the whale engraved on the Grand Menhir Brisé, which
Mm.
is the tallest menhir anywhere, 20 meters high.
Or used to
And
be. Yeah.
and the only engraving you have there, even in relief, is the sperm whale or the whale with the little crook um, tucked to his strangely elongated tail fin.
Mm.
And and this Grand Menhir Brisé, it was the biggest one in this alignment, and hypothetically, or perhaps even probably, this alignment continued to the south also, but there have been no excavation. There's the street, and on the other hand, there's still a cattle pasture. So I think it would be it would not be too costly to determine if this alignment continued there, but apparently nothing is happening to that effect. And here we can see the positioning of the engraving, which would already be about 12, 13 meters above the ground. And usually sperm whales are not above the ground. Do you agree?
No.
And
I do agree.
but if you have sperm whales in the sky, of course, this makes more sense. And this is something I just did as a form of playing around. But the parallel is, in English, it would be perhaps nothing but a joke, drôlerie, perhaps.
Well, I think the whale looks a little suspicious.
Yeah, perhaps nothing but a joke, but certainly not. Oh, what happened there? But certainly not more strange than some exercice de style et for l'image. Something went missing there. These are studies by Professor Cassen, who
Hmm.
who well who tries to create his own interpretation from
Yeah,
scratch
yeah.
without considering cultural principles well known from everywhere else.
Okay.
And now we come to my reasoning. Why is this whale abstracted in this very strange way with a kind of trapezoidal head, an elongated body, and a short tail fin, a short half of the tail fin going upward and a long
Mm.
going downward? And why does it have this crook? Did they hunt whales with boomerangs or croziers? They just hit them in the head and then you could catch them easily, probably.
Hmm.
No,
Hmm.
my personal explanation for this um, silhouette contour is that it derives from this, and
Yeah.
it is very easily, if you put the brightest stars behind, then you get the reason for the long tail fin here. You have the brightest star in the hunting dogs here. You have this one, which is still, I think, one in Arcturus, which is actually at the time 4600 BC, very close to the pole. And on the other side, you have the Crozier, but that we'll see afterwards. And
Hmm.
this is just one version. You even have this star here, which may be the explanation for this little um, nose here.
Yeah.
Or the whale has just caught a cold and his nose is running. I don't know. Wait,
Yeah.
you have the same representation of a whale in Gavrinis,
Yeah.
where again you have a creature of the sea represented above a bovine and a caprite, a goat, something,
Mm.
and a cow
Yeah.
with strangely crooked horns. And here you even have a human form, like you often
Oh,
see
yeah.
in Italy. So this is something deeply, probably mythological. The
Hmm.
human form is very small compared to these huge animals, which, in my opinion, not just the whale, they are constellations, in my
Yeah.
view. People were sent to heaven long before this was a Christian idea. And then
Yeah.
you can see it here again. This silhouette derived from this.
Hmm.
And for me, one thing close to a proof that I'm not completely wrong is the fact that this whale is also represented with a triangular head, two times in the Dolmen de Manet Ritual, where also earlier stele with relief engravings are incorporated again. You
Mm.
have these two examples here, and you have crooks or croziers just beside them. One of these whales is just to the left on that stone here. So again, you have a link between sperm whale and crozier. And again, this silhouette for me has its origins in this, which again is just incorporating the bright star here below the Big Dipper. And you can see again that the scale is not out of place at all. And even the line of the blow is formed by a line of faint stars, which starts as a line of one. And then here even you have two, so it gets wider, just
Okay.
as it
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
in reality and as it does with the engraved examples. Then the next one we have here. again, it is, I can only excuse myself for this heretic hypothesis, but the only excuse is that it works.
Mm.
Or
Yeah.
anybody is welcome to give me a better explanation. This is the one I discovered myself, where Professor Kassen informed me that that these lines look like the scratch marks of a building of a construction vehicle. This must have
Right.
been a very careful construction vehicle, and it must have been a very old one too, because these lines are extremely weathered. And
Yeah.
again, they form the shape of a triangular head here and a very big tail fin here. And you can even guess the outline of a crozier here. And again,
It's that same region of the sky.
same region of the sky. And then here we have something like a Rosetta Stone. This is on the Menhir de Kermayar. You have a sperm whale or a whale engraved with its
Yeah.
flow. Here you have a very nice crozier. And here you have the same thing represented by cup marks. And these were not drawn or documented by me, but they were documented by Professor Cassin. So you have at the same size, in the same scale, you have a crozier in, let's say, pointillé, and you have a properly engraved crozier. And
Mm.
you also have this here, which corresponds to the head, to the trapezoidal part of the head of the whale. And here,
Okay.
many cup marks of which I cannot make anything, but perhaps an astronomer with a certain knowledge of constellations, which should be definitely better than mine, they
Mm.
might identify much more than I am able to.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am no astronomer. I thought they should know, but they wouldn't. Again, this is my drawing of this. And yeah, just here you can see, oops, there are four little ones in here. And the next closest example for these four within the Dipper part of the Big Dipper comes, and they exist actually, but the closest comparison is from the star chart from Dunhuang, dating 7th century, where you can, the only constellation that we can properly recognize with our Greek Roman knowledge is the Big Dipper here. And it's also
Yeah.
written here as Beidou, the Chinese name for Big Dipper, which actually means even Big Dipper. And there is Tenno, which means heavenly emperor. And there you see these four stars
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
within the Big Dipper. So, which is not surprising because they could make the same observation in Brittany 5,000 years earlier.
But it takes it's more than coincidence, surely, to single out those four within the Big Dipper. Or is there a sense of some kind of cultural exchange there, or is this just a coincidence?
I don't know. It's definitely not a coincidence, but imagine this is how this thought ripened in my head, because one evening I came out of fencing training in Tokyo, and usually you don't see the stars very well, but it was in winter and there was
Mhm.
clear sky, and I saw Orion in the south, very nice, brightly. I saw the Bull and the Pleiades, even from Tokyo. And then I
Mhm.
had this very reassuring thought that 8 hours later, they will see exactly the same thing back home.
Yeah.
So there don't have to
Yeah.
be any links because they saw the same program each night. They had the
Yeah.
same television program each night.
Yeah. You're right. So we're looking at the same sky.
Yes,
But one thing that
definitely.
strikes me is how different the outlines we're seeing on these prehistoric stones are from the outlines that we're used to in terms
Yes.
of the Greek
Yep.
and the Roman constellations, even the Egyptian ones. It's quite different. However, there are a lot of watery creatures. That's something that you could say that they have in common. It seems to be quite aquatic, but
Hmm.
but very different.
Yes, and in the meantime, I think they did this in a much more sensible way than the Romans and Babylonians did, because you have to use much more fantasy to see our present constellation figures in
Mm,
the stars than to just imagine a line drawn around the brightest stars of the
mhm,
circumpolar
mhm.
region. And this is the very nice rendering of the Big Dipper in cup marks. It is the Menhir de Kelvit, and also in on Ile-de-Croix,
Okay.
only 1 kilometer away from the Bhutan Erha, where there was this slab with the 5000 BC star chart.
Yeah.
And here, most probably, we have one for 4600 BC, because the most important, the cup mark representing the star, the closest to the pole at around 4600 BC, is the one that was drilled deepest. And this
Interesting.
is absolutely evident. She is the topmost,
Mm,
like here. And you can see here, this part is distorted. I
hmm
cannot tell the reason. This would be too close again, but at the same time, as the stone is rounded, to have it more placed more correctly, it would have to be somewhere here, but then it would not be on the same plane again. So they
Mm,
just, yeah, put it here. But again, this star below is also, it's just there. So again, this is a much more accurate rendering of a constellation, of an asterism, than we have from, yeah, say 5th century to 16th.
yeah. There's a sense that it's been a little squished, but it's definitely there. And even if you hadn't done this work, I'd say looking at these markings on the stone, they do look like some kind of constellation outline, just not one that we'd easily recognize today. But
Yes.
looking at
Yeah.
that, you'd say, oh yeah, that must be
Yeah.
stars, right?
And just to where there's no reason to justify, but just to be sure, I checked. This is no cup mark. This is no cup mark. This is no cup mark. So I checked all with
Yeah,
fingers and senses and
yeah.
from close up.
This is just
So
natural.
there are no other man-made cup marks on this stone.
Yeah, yeah. They're really visible. That's really amazing to
Oh,
be able to
I
see
put
them.
chalk in there, certainly, and I washed it off
Yeah,
again because
yeah.
some colleagues say, oh, this is destroying the stone. But the acid in the rain is certainly not destroying the stone,
Mm,
and
yes,
farmers putting them away and turning them into gravel is certainly not destroying
yes, yeah. Well,
monuments.
yeah. Watch that chalk.
And here is on the right side, you see the Spanish version of the whale or fish. And here the Breton version.
So you said that earlier, but I didn't ask you the Spanish version. This is because this is the way it's done in the Spanish stones.
Yeah,
Is that
you
what you
find
mean?
it in several dolmen in Spain, very nicely documented again by Professor Casen, Jacobo Vaquero, and their colleagues. And I did not have the opportunity at all as yet to visit the monuments in Spain, so I
Mm,
can only rely on their work. But
mhm.
the only Spanish type, La Chose, they call it, which is quite reasonable when not knowing
The
properly
thing.
what it is.
Yeah.
Um, this is the only example from southern France. And
Uh-huh.
here now you can see both. This would be the Spanish way to link up the Big
hmm
Dipper.
hmm
And they just used different stars. They just took the bright line of stars here to create their line here. And you have two ways of creating the tail fin, but this makes as much sense as this.
Yeah, it still fits.
Yeah, and just the Breton version is more exact, and the Spanish version leaves more to the imagination because
Yeah.
there is no proper sightline or no star that actually helps you determine the proper pole. So there, this kind of whale where there is the Crozier on the other side, this makes far more sense,
Yeah.
or this is more accurate. And here you can see at different times of year how this fish would turn around the pole. We have the um, winter solstice one evening here. We have the spring equinox here. We have the summer solstice here and autumn equinox here. And now look at what they have
That's
in
great to see.
Spain, which I would love to see in person. Here in the Dolmen de Dombate, you have an orthostat with this drawing. You have these things circling around a central point, and you can
Yeah.
even see that this central point was emphasized. Here, this was cut deeper.
Hmm.
And for me, here it gets speculative, but for me, these are not spaghetti or just some scribblings. For me, there is a definitive and how would you say, worth researching option that this should line out the path of the pole. So this would be another indicator that they knew precession. And in
Yeah.
Brittany, I am certain that they knew about precession because in the meantime, I have about 5 or 6 examples from late Paleolithic times to Mesolithic times. So
Wow.
actually, the megalithic phase is just the flourishing point of this polar cosmology, I'd call it.
So we're going way back in theory, in
Definitely.
time.
Yeah, yeah. And here you can even see that they recreated the outline of the Big Dipper in graves. This is the Table des Marchands. This was the oldest plan by Lucas, 1864. This is the present day measure by Professor Cassin, and he sent me this picture below, which was very nice before the time before I got dangerous or heretic or stupid or whatever. And but you can easily see, and there is no reasoning up to now why they built the graves like that. The supposition seems to be they were not able to build proper geometric rectangular grave chambers. But they did this on purpose, and this is not the only example. Here is one in
Amazing.
La Hoguette, where the skeletons were even laid out in the position of the brightest stars in the Big Dipper.
Oh my God.
And this was published in
Oh wow. I've never seen
1896.
that.
And this is, of course, dangerous for me to show this because it's very easy for colleagues, they might say, oh, at that time they were so bad with measuring, they had no proper methodology. So this is probably just fantasy. But I
Wow.
think we at least have to consider that this might not be fantasy because it is too close to what we find in Brittany in terms of the outline of the whole structure and the positioning of the skeletons with which even correspond the size of the compartments even corresponds to the brightness of the stars. You see, this one would be Maigres. This is one of the smallest. These two are small. This is the smallest. This would be the star that is the faintest in the sky.
Do you think maybe, and this is just me speculating, but do you think maybe these skeletons are there to assist souls departing this earth to the right place of in the sky or something?
Oh, I would guess that they were just sent there. They, there is no need that they had to be put in there at the same time. But
Mm.
say if it is a family and you had your architect construct your tomb well
Oh yeah.
before, you just needed a marker, and then when this person is dying, when the next person is dying, you put them in.
Hmm.
So this
So a
doesn't
family tomb,
demand
yeah.
rocket science either. And for me, I would trust them. I see that these researchers of the 19th century, they often had the absolutely right ideas.
Hmm.
And Sus didn't even recognize, he didn't even mention that this looks close to the Big Dipper.
Hmm.
Because as most archaeologists now, they would not even think that this could be an option.
Hmm.
But if you're studying Big Dipper culture for 20 years, um, well, this looks suspicious
You're
somehow.
going to see it straight away.
And then, yeah, I just drew some lines. And here you have another example, the dolmen de Manet carillonnette, which is also, they call it bottlenecked shaped, but this is not even a proper bottle. They try to imitate the trapezoidal part of the Big Dipper, which would be the head of the whale,
Yeah.
which was the most important or the crucial part for souls of be it just an elite or be it everybody else to go to the sky.
Mm.
And then, yeah, this is without. And here's another nice example. Nobody, nobody even dared mention before me. This was published by Zachary Le Ruzic, Fouille faite à Canac. This is the, no, I cannot see it at the Oh, I forgot This is not possible. Can you read it? Grundriss der Castelic, Tertre de Castelic.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, those words are there. Yes,
And this looks very like a fish, doesn't it? And
it does. Yeah.
and now look what happens if you put dots into the middle of these little compartments here, into the corners here, into the middle
Right.
here. And again, this should be probably coincidence or esoteric fancy.
Wow. Is that old Big Dipper again?
Yeah.
Um, this is
And even
crazy.
the Tertre de Manio is nothing else than the head of a big whale. But
Yeah.
it sounds, well, at the same time, Professor Kassen is publishing a book, La Folle Image, where he says that this stone in the Table des Marchands could be this part of a whale opening his mouth to
Hmm.
swallow a ship or something.
Or Jonah.
So I think we might at least be not crazy in two different ways, in two, yeah, differing ways. Milton. And again,
Incredible.
and here they even detail something because there is an extremely weak star here,
Hmm.
which was probably hardly visible at all then also. But
Yeah.
somebody apparently saw it because they incorporated it because this one is even closer than the one of the tail fin here. And you can see this is represented by that one.
There's a little sort of alcove in the tomb there, is there?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
these little quadrangular structures.
Wow.
And so this nobody can tell me that this wasn't properly planned, measured, laid out, constructed, built, finished, used.
And the orientation is north, which
Um,
corresponds to,
I wouldn't say it's just the positioning of the Big Dipper around the summer solstice at
right,
the
okay.
time. And because and Zachary Le Ruzic, different from many colleagues nowadays, he wrote that this is magnetic north. And you can
Okay.
calculate the deviation with a magnetic declination calculator from the government of Canada. And for the time he did this excavation, the deviation of magnetic north from true north, which is red here, is about, it's written there, warning, 14 degrees,
14.
14 degrees. So it is very easy for us to say if I have 2 degrees deviation in my examples, oh, that's not exact enough. While many colleagues still publish or work with plans which just use magnetic north and at the same time dismiss
Mm.
archaeoastronomical theories.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, yep.
But I think
I,
that's very convincing. It's a fish, it's a whale. I mean, the tail, like even if you hadn't shown those things, the tail is like a fish tail on the tomb on the
Hmm.
structure.
Hmm. You know this bar food? This was very popular in Germany, Goldfischli. And
Okay.
this was the one, this reminded me of that one. And now we come
Okay.
to bigger constructions representing the whale on Earth, because this plan was done by, is it Archibald Tome, or was this the son? No, Alexander, his, which
The
was the
sun.
father? Oh my God.
The sun is Alexander, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, then it was, well, I forgot his first name, Professor Tome, anyway, whose ability to calculate I cannot follow, but who did very, very exact measurements. And
Mm.
this is the measurement of the Champ de Menhir in Karnak. And if you link up the stones he has measured, you end up with this. And if you now draw some farther lines, you arrive here. And again, you have a sanctuary which looks very like a whale. And
It
even
does.
in the head part here, you have the trapezoid of the Big Dipper.
Oh my God.
And
So
this
this
is,
is on several scales. So it's
yes,
within the structures, but it's also various structures creating even bigger ones.
yes, yeah. And you can
Wow.
see here the whole thing is about more than 30 meters long and 20 meters this way. And to get these proportions, certainly you had to measure, you had to plan, you
Hmm.
had to have units and say, well, everybody's criticizing the megalithic yard, but it just makes sense. And they didn't probably, well, disprove his
Hmm.
results.
Hmm.
And then another example, this is from the Dalle de Saint-Bélec, which was interpreted as a geographical map recently by two colleagues from Yvan Paillet and Clément Nicolas. And they got huge publicity with their theory. And this was the first time that topographical map theory wasn't ridiculed or attacked or destroyed by colleagues, but
Nice.
regarded as something serious. But I think I have at least another layer of significance for this because, again, here you have ups,
Yeah.
the fish head, you have the four little cupules inside, and here you have a little crozier and an axe blade. So
Yeah.
you have the same symbolism again.
Yeah.
And here we have it on a scale of more than 400 meters. And this was ingenious, actually, this observation by Alfred Devois, who also knew about precession. He wrote, the western part of the Ensemble de Languedoc seems to represent a mounted axe, where the alley represents the hilt, B, the cutting edge or the blade, A, the ça serait,
The handle.
this would have been the rope to grip it. And
Oh yeah.
he thinks, who is this, l'hypothèse? The hypothesis of the axe could be replaced by that of the plow, the hache-charrue, the plow axe, which we can find, or we are here in presence of reproduction at a very large scale of the engraving which decorates the interior face of the Table des Marchands.
So he made that connection.
Yes, and he did this in 1911, and nobody followed up on this. They just,
Oh,
nowadays, they say, ah, they had no good methodology, so everything they wrote just don't think about it. They destroyed so much with their bad excavations and everything, but nobody is looking for the good things they did, for the good ideas they had. And this is an observation that led me to find several other examples. For
that's
example,
incredible.
if you would project this on the actual area nowadays, This
Yeah.
here is the only menhir still in place.
Oh,
That
really?
one
The
here.
rest is gone.
Yes, there are others
Mm.
here which were recently found, and most of the other big ones, they have been ranged to the side of the road, so to say, to make space for the fields. But this alignment would have been one of the most impressive in all of Brittany. But in Finistère,
Oh,
they destroyed much more than they did in the Morbihan region.
what a shame. And Alfred Devois says that, doesn't he, in that article, that you
Yes,
have to take the each monument in relation to the others. So you have to look at them in terms of their placement
he
in
he didn't
relative
say
to
this.
others.
He just published this observation, and I drew the conclusion that if he has this one obvious example, there should be others, and
Ah,
there are several still. And here, yeah, you can see again. And now the next example, also on Crozier, the TR Curie alignments, where you can see again the rectangular head. This time you have a rectangular blow fountain, and you have part of the tail fin here, and you have a very long procession road, which is much easier recognizable on this plan by Paul du Châtelier from 1883. And it's not rocket science to just complete the outline by my little red lines here. And
yeah,
again, you arrive at the same motive. You have a
same, yeah.
longer part of the tail fin here. The upper part is missing or destroyed, but it's the same plan. It's the same thought behind. And this is,
That long line then that takes up most of
yeah,
the diagram, what does that
this would
what does that
most.
correspond to in real life? Is that an actual alignment of stones?
Yes, yeah, yeah. And
Wow.
this most probably this would have been a kind of procession alley, just as still it's forbidden to say that, but most probably some of the longer alignments in Karnak are nothing else also than
Mm.
procession um, settings. Yeah. And here perhaps you've been there, it's in Camaret-sur-Mer. These are also quite famous, Lagachar. And they just, yeah, they say alignments, and you cannot make anything out of it. But if you look at it from the sky, Google Earth, you can see that this is not straight, neither is this one.
Mm-hmm.
And recently I've been there, and there is at least one
Oh,
pole of another one here.
so you can
So
imagine the rest.
yeah, you probably have something like this. You have the body here, and check. This is what's actually extant still, what is still there. And well, if you count together two and two, you arrive at something like this.
Yeah. You've trained my eye, and probably anyone watching this, you've trained their eye now. You just see it.
Yeah. And it's, yeah, and then please disprove me. Please go there and take measurements with a ground radar and tell me
Mm.
that there are no holes for menhirs. Just check.
I would
But
love to see that.
nobody should tell me that this is crazy
Yeah.
because there are at least five, six examples of these things there.
Even if it didn't correspond to what you found and it corresponds to in the sky, it's the same shape on the stones and on the ground.
Definitely. And this would be a huge step forward for archaeology.
Mm.
But it just comes from the wrong side because there is a kind of interpretation monopoly for people who are in the CNRS circles,
Yeah.
although they don't even read the articles of their colleagues, as we said before, when it comes to maps to scale at around 6000 BC in Saudi Arabia. At the
Mm.
same time, they say in Brittany, no, you could not map anything, you could not plan, you could not measure. Here is an example for the crook. You have two natural fissures which
Yeah.
were uh, embellished by people here, carving this and carving these cupules.
Yeah.
So you have just like an explanation for a child, you link up these stars and you get the crook. And we saw the first example also at the Menhir de Kermayar, where we had the crook drawn, engraved properly,
Mhm.
and we had it represented by Cupules,
Yeah.
not documented in falsifying intention by me, but documented by Professor Cassin.
Okay.
And here again, we have another pointer that this Crozier is actually circling. This is on the cinquième, on the fifth, on the left from the entrance.
Yeah,
You
this is
can,
very famous, this one, isn't it?
and you can nicely see the Crozier linked to a set of concentric circles, and you even have, like with a screw, you have these lines here, which
Hmm.
also imply circular motion. And of
Yeah.
course, all of this is moving circular around the pole. And again, in combination with the Big Dipper, this is at Trefiaga, a site with loads of cupules. You have 8 cupules in this order. You have a group of 4, and you have these 1, 2, 3,
That's the
4
Big Dipper.
here. And just beside, you have a nicely and deep carved crozier.
Wow. And you've put little candles in
Hmm.
the places.
Yeah. And people say, this is such a crazy idea. Why do you put lamps in there? But, well, this is not crazy because the oldest lamps of mankind are nothing else but cup-marked portable stones where you put
Hmm.
fat inside and a
And a
wick.
wick.
Wick, yeah. So it's not stupid to think that these were used as lamps and perhaps even
Yeah.
lit for certain ceremonies
Yeah. Yeah.
at different important festivities throughout the year.
Hmm.
And
So I presume this stone lies fairly flat then, does it?
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
it is called a pseudo dolmen
Okay.
because it could be a burial beneath, but yeah, would not necessarily. There's a hollow space below, but 5 meters farther on, there is a large panel with about 200, 300 cupules, which was published, but the colleague who published it, Michel Le Gouffic, he did not publish this one. He just published the one with the obvious engravings.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well,
And here now, we are approaching an end. Um, this would be just the Big Dipper, and you see this line here crossing the pole at 4600 BC. And here you see the Crozier
yeah.
and the whale. And this certainly for me, this is the most reasonable or obvious reason why whales are represented together with croziers. Not
Hmm.
because they were killed with boomerangs, but because of this arrangement which allows one to navigate properly, be it on
Yeah.
the sea or to navigate to the final aim of your soul.
So there you have that link again to traveling, yeah, in the astral planes, the soul after death.
Again, again,
Yeah.
as we have on this huge stele again from Manet Ritual, which is the cover stone. And here we have Professor Cassin's phallus again, which I don't think is one. And to make a connection to the sky or to my interpretation of the axe, you have above this phallus of, for me, a cosmogram, a description of the world as they saw it.
Hmm.
You have this huge axe blade, which would be around 2 meters high,
All
but
right. Gives a
the
sense of
stone was
proportion.
broken here, and it's not known what has become of this part and what has become of the lower part.
Oh,
Only
okay.
this is known. This is a molding in the Musée de la Préhistoire,
Hmm.
and this would be an example for an actual jadeite axe. And now we see here my hypothesis of the axe asterism. Here we have an axe, an actual
Yeah.
axe, and now you see what happens.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, here you see the nice little perforation.
Yeah. Can you see through that perforation, I wonder?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going through. And here you can see that this point only, this is only the pole point at around 4250 BC.
Mm.
Only then this makes sense. And the
Yeah.
fact that you have axis with this perforation already 200 or 300 years earlier in Tumulus Saint-Michel and in the, mon Dieu, I forgot the name of the Butte de César in Arzon.
Okay.
Um, uh, these are older and they already have the perforations. And for me, this is a proof that they knew that the pole was shifting from this area through here and continuing to there. This is the pole star at 2800 BC. And this is not esoteric stories or something. This is
Mm.
just astronomical basics, facts.
Do you think it's possible that this could have served as a way to find north, that you would place it in the sky so as to see those three stars at the tips?
Perhaps this would be great idea, but this would take us another hour.
Mm.
I found there is a little slate in the Musée in Karnak, which I published also in academia, which has the shape of the trapezoidal part of the Big Dipper. And
Mm.
if you hold it this close to your eyes, the edges, the corners are rounded off. And if you hold it like this, you see the four stars of the Big Dipper part in the corners of the stone. So this is like a symbolic telephone to the polar region in the sky. Really, yeah. And
Yeah.
with an axe, you certainly could do the same.
Yeah. And that's not to say that this axe isn't also or primarily used as an axe. I mean, doing exactly what you expect it to be for. Is
Well,
this kind of axe supposed to be for hunting or is it for cutting wood or do you know?
these the really elaborately polished ones and perforated ones, it's nearly absolutely certain that they were never made for use.
Oh,
These
interesting.
were just symbolical, like
Yeah.
liturgical instruments,
Mm.
nothing else.
Mm.
And now, yeah,
Very intriguing.
this was the first, my first impression that I sent to Professor Kassen, where he
Yeah.
answered, "Oh, yeah, yeah." He didn't say anything. He just said, "Ah, good luck." He
Uh,
didn't comment, no comment on this strange idea. This is the first one I made 8 years ago. And here yeah, just to finish, this would be, yeah, here we are again.
Amazing. So we have the whale, the axe, and the crook or the crozier.
And they make
Incredible.
perfect sense only around, say, between 4,700, 800 and 3,900.
And
But
that's consistent with the dates of the stones, the monuments, and the jadeite
yes, yeah,
axis.
yeah, yeah.
So
Actually,
you're confirming
actually,
that.
yes, actually, I thought this would be welcome to some colleagues to have the evidence by carbon 14
Yeah.
confirmed or sometimes even precised by this method. But
Mm.
as there is the dogma, the prejudice that astronomical theories are completely out of the way in archaeology,
Yeah.
they did not even check about the possibility if this is right. But say if I give lectures on the subject, people without prejudice, they understand. And at the same time, colleagues tell me, well, I don't know what precession is, but all these star theories, this is completely crazy. And
Mm.
yeah, I I do not agree.
No, well, I don't agree, although I don't have a problem with crazy either, but I think this is very convincing. I think you've actually made your point very clearly and very sensibly. You're rational, you're logical, you're not overclaiming, you're just pointing out that these shapes are repeated in various ways on different scales, and that you can find a correspondence in the sky. And I think that makes sense. It's very logical. And I think that knowing that what we do about the ancient world in general, not necessarily in particular in Brittany or in Spain, but in general, that they were interested in this in the sky, and that religion and mythical gods have associations to the stars and the various constellations. It just makes sense to look there for the answers.
You have the same phenomena in Northern America with different tribes. You have it in Eastern Asia, you have it in Middle Asia, you have it in India,
Yeah.
you have it in the Southern Hemisphere. Recently, a person from the audience in D asked me, "Well, but how about the Southern Hemisphere?" And I just had to
Mhm.
answer, I'm already overcharged with the Northern Hemisphere.
Yes.
So
Give
I could
one
not.
hemisphere at a time.
Yes, yeah, one hemisphere at a time, please. When we spoke a lot about megaliths today,
Hmm.
and one very simple reason for the megalithic phenomenon, which I never read in any of the standard studies from my colleagues at least, is that you have in many different cultures, the sky is imagined as a dome of rock. You have this in Babylonia, where different spheres in the
Hmm.
sky are described as consisting of different kinds of stone. In
Oh,
Japan, it is obvious because the sun goddess once hides in the heavenly rock cave, and there's a heavenly rock boat and everything. And in Japanese mythology, the first deity which is mentioned in the first sentence of the oldest written down tradition in 709, the Kojiki, is called Ame no Minaka Nushi no Kami. This the meaning is the noble deity of the center of heaven. And there is only
wow.
one center of heaven. And this is very close to Chinese cosmology. But here we are again at this point where I think it is necessary to distinguish between a cosmology of life and the
Mm,
sun, and a cosmology of death, night, and moon and stars, certainly.
mm.
And of
I
course,
don't think that's that different from Plato's idea of
yes, the
creation in the
cave.
Timaeus, where he says that this demiurge sets in motion, and this is a kind of like a story of creation, sets in motion these circles that go around,
Mhm.
some of them in the same direction, and then one large one in the opposite direction,
Mhm.
and it's kind of something similar, because if there's a circle going around and around, there has to be a center point.
Yes, and only nowadays we know that this is just an illusion which is due to the turning of the Earth around its own axis.
But
But
it's an important one.
to any pre-scientific form of logic, it must have been, and for most people
Mm.
probably still is, obvious that everything is turning around us.
Mm.
We are speaking of the sun coming up or the sun going down, which is
Yeah.
completely wrong from a
Mm.
scientific viewpoint.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with describing our experience,
Yes,
and
yeah,
that's not to say
exactly.
we don't understand the other
Exactly.
explanation.
The,
Um,
the,
it's
mm,
just our experience of it, and that's related to our life and maybe our death. So I know you've also done a lot of work on the Big Dipper. This is a really key constellation or asterism, and you found it on some weapons in Japan, isn't that right?
yeah, you're right. This is actually this was how it all started.
Yeah.
And just to finish this one point, I think there is not the slightest reason for us nowadays to be arrogant,
Mm.
because they were not stupid then. And the whole Big Dipper project, so to say, started about 25 years ago in Japan, when I saw several early Japanese iron swords with the Big
Mm.
Dipper engraved on it. And but then what I didn't know is that there are hundreds of swords, of early swords with the Big Dipper engraved on it in China and Korea.
Mm.
And I asked why is this the case? And the obvious explanation is their polar cosmology, where the center of the universe, well, China, the empire of the center, and this is not just any center, it's the center of the universe.
Mm.
And from that moment on, I said, well, people in our area in Europe, be it northern, western, southern, eastern, um, they necessarily made the same observation. They also
Yeah.
observed that everything was turning around one still point. And this is also the reason why the highest deities of several religions reside at the northern celestial pole. And they live there all together in harmony and peace.
Yeah. That's a
The-
thought worth remembering. You've made an incredible presentation here. The images were so clear and so compelling. And I think you said you're working on a book.
yes, the trouble is that I think I would need 3 months to sit down and write it, but it's not
Mm.
possible due to, well, having to earn
Work.
some money,
Yes.
a
Yes.
living. So it will still take some time, and
Mm.
but several chapters are already written. It's
Brilliant.
just a matter of putting it together in a good form, and
Yeah.
I have no access to somebody who is doing proper illustration work. The only thing I can do is, just as you've seen, I can manipulate a little bit with PowerPoint. I can draw, but this is completely unprofessional. But I'm glad that you think that it's clear
I
enough.
did think it was very good. I have to say, I thought it was very clear and also very nice to look at, colorful and it makes sense and it makes you want to look at the sky, actually.
It is colorful, and I always try to motivate people to look at the sky, because if
Yeah.
you do this, you start to realize how huge these things are
Hmm.
and how obvious they are. But well, if we live in towns nowadays, we hardly see any stars
I
anyway.
know.
And but the whole program there, it's still up there, and it's not less impressive than it was for them who had no distractions, not
Yeah.
so many distractions during nighttime, probably.
Yes, it's true. Yeah, I'm feeling this urge now to rearrange the fairy lights behind me into a whale shape. Well, listen, Stefan, thank you so much for that presentation. It was really fantastic. Your findings are brilliant. I think they're very convincing, and I really hope other people engage with your work and also start looking at the sky, but also start looking at stones in their area, and maybe look to see if there are various markings, the cupules, and to
Mhm.
see if they correspond to anything, perhaps even these very same
Mm.
shapes or something different.
Mm.
It would be great.
Actually, after the report on the findings on Mont Saint-Michel, there
Mm.
were several people from the area who introduced me to new cup marks, and there were at least two or
Great.
three further examples of Big Dippers. So,
Wow.
so, um,
Yeah.
so me as a single person, I can, what I have found up to now, these are
Mm.
dozens and about more than 100 in the northern hemisphere, but certainly this is just the
Amazing.
beginning.
Just a drop in the celestial ocean.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure that this is just the beginning, because, well, probably these things will become recognized about 20, 30 years after I am no more. But this will be definitely worthwhile to check out. Well, there are certainly southern constellations represented also, but I cannot do it. It takes
Mhm.
astronomers with enough fantasy to consider that bright stars could have been linked in completely different ways from ours, and
Mm.
to kind of reconstruct ancient constellations,
Yeah.
where I think I dare say I was successful with at least these three,
Mm.
the Crozier, the Axe, and the Whale.
Yeah. So people go cupule hunting. And Stefan, are you working on anything else at the moment or in the near future?
On medieval examples for circumpolar representations.
Wow, that could be
Mhm.
really interesting. We'll have to talk about that next time. Okay, well,
Yes.
thank you so much, Stefan. That was really brilliant.